I think McAvoy, just based off of the fact that he's probably the only above average defenseman on that team, and he's a good defenseman. You can't deny that.
No,
He's a good defenseman.
Solid.
Being the top D man on that team, he's going to be playing 22 minutes plus easy.
Yeah,
every
you're
night.
right. Yeah.
If he gets power play one time and he's obviously top pairing, I think he has the potential to be, in a 56-game season, put up 45 to 50 points.
Wow. Really? But in my semifinal matchup, he only put up 2 fantasy points, and he was projected for like 17, 18,
that's
and
rough.
that's
the thing. Like, at least with other sports, if a guy has a bad week or a bad couple games, like, you can make up for it with the other players. But in football, like, one guy has a terrible game, and it's like, your week could be over.
I don't know. I think it's fun. It's also a shortened season too compared to other.
It's definitely fun, but like, you need to know what you're doing to do well. Like, you can't really get by off of just like putting no effort into it.
It really depends on the draft, I would say. I made the least amount of transactions in my league, and I finished in first in the regular season.
Just had a good.
Yeah, I just had a good draft. Yeah, but no, you're 100% right. And like football fans in general, like football fantasy might even be above NFL in terms of fans' involvement.
Oh, yeah, it seems like it. Especially nowadays with the ratings going down so much for the NFL. Exactly. It seems like fantasy football, like, I think fantasy basketball is a big enough community, but football, like, fantasy football dwarfs fantasy basketball even.
Yeah. Like, most people just watch NFL football because they're in a fantasy league and they have money on the line. Or like, even with just bets, that you don't have to be in a fantasy league. Like, you can bet on the game, you can bet on the player if he gets a touchdown or not. And like, there's some ridiculous bets too. Coin toss.
I've seen that.
Which side of the field does the team want at the start of the game? And like, Super Bowl is going to come up too. There's going to be some crazy ones with the anthem. So yeah, I mean, it's all fun in games, but when you start losing money, it's not good.
Yeah.
But anyways, let's do a proper intro. Welcome back to Unlimited, episode number 27. Tyler Moore is the guest today. He's been on, I think, 4 or 5 episodes previous. You guys recognize him. He's back in town for a couple of days. Thought I'd get him on the pod. So yeah, how are you doing today, Tyler? And how was your Christmas?
Oh, I'm doing all right. It's crazy time these days, but Christmas was all right. Did it back up in Huntsville, and then just down here for a couple of days. Have to babysit my niece, so that's why we're in town. But yeah, besides that, just pretty quiet. Not too much going on, obviously. But yeah. You had a good Christmas with your family?
Yeah, I mean, can't complain. Definitely a different kind of Christmas, but hey, we made the most of it, and looking forward to another Zoom call on New Year's Eve with the family. Lots of Zoom calls. Definitely, I did 2 of them, and then just a couple of FaceTime calls as well. Just Zoom is so clutch. Zoom. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what schools would do without Zoom as well. If there was no such thing as Zoom, like, how do we do the classes? And like, just it's good. It's good. And
when did Zoom even come about? Like, I had never heard.
I know, right?
Once until the pandemic started, and then all of a sudden everybody's using Zoom.
When did Zoom come out? Let's see. 2013, Zoom started.
Wow. I'd like to see their user number. Yeah. I'm sure March 2020 it shot through the roof.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it doesn't say stats here, but I'm sure there will be some coming soon. Maybe. We'll see. Exactly. It's been crazy. Discord has also been another popular app. I don't know if you have to use that for any of your classes, but we have like a group chat on Zoom not on Zoom, on Discord. And then how I do my my live radio shows as well. That's all been through Discord as well this year. So we stream that to like their Spirit Live channel. Have you ever used Discord?
I've used it a little bit, like a couple of my classes. Some students just made group chats to just talk about it, but
Yeah.
not anything necessary for a course, just kind of using it to talk to other people in the class. But yeah, I haven't had, my school uses something called Adobe Connect. So some
Okay.
classes are on Zoom, some classes are on Adobe Connect. Like it's the same sort of idea, just a video screen sharing app, and there's a chat that you can type into. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if every class used the same application, so you didn't need to remember which ones to open for each class. But
Yeah.
it's been all right, I guess.
Yeah. I've had to download a lot of other programs as well for like live sport production class, where we actually have to
Hmm.
put on like a production every single week. I had to download Skype, which I didn't have. I had to download this thing called the Gero, this thing called Unity for intercom. So that's like where you talk to the director, the producer, the
Oh,
audio
okay.
person, the graphics person. So I have that on my phone. And then I have like the actual like production view on my laptop. It's hard to explain. But anyways, there's a lot of stuff. Lots of gigabytes were taken up. And I'm curious if I can delete that right now because I want to. Because I'm running out of space on my laptop. End of the semester, I don't think I'm going to have any more production classes. So I want to find out soon if I can delete them. If any
Yeah,
of my professors are listening, can I delete these?
yeah.
Please, because I need some
Put it in
room
the
on my
comments
computer.
below.
Yeah, exactly. I need help. Okay. Let's get into the thick of things. I am a little bit tired. I stayed up till 4 a.m. last night, editing a Toronto Maple Leaf season hype video, which should be coming out soon,
Nice.
for on this channel. So stay tuned for that. It's good, short video, but it's a good song. It's good stuff. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I don't know if it's going to be out this Friday. It could be out. If I don't split this up into 2 episodes, then it will be up on Friday. But if I do split up this up into 2 episodes, it'll be out next week.
Well,
So
pressure on us to not talk too much then, I guess.
I guess we'll see. Hey, it doesn't matter. Lots of content coming for Unlimited too, by the way. I'm filming another episode on Saturday. And then I'm actually filming our live fantasy hockey draft on the 3rd, which will be up sometime later that week. So lots of content coming. Speaking of fantasy, this whole episode should be about, or most of it will be about fantasy hockey. Tyler's been doing fantasy hockey for a couple of years. He knows his stuff really well. We have some good conversations about fantasy hockey, always keeping us up to date with how each one of us is doing, waiver transactions, pickups, standing updates. So, Tyler, when is your fantasy draft?
Well, that's a good question. I'm in two leagues. So one is points league, just kind of standard points league, with some banger cats, but obviously mostly weighted to goals and assists. So that draft is happening the 10th, and then I'm in a head-to-head categories league, banger league. That draft, we haven't set a date yet, but I think it'll be kind of around 10th, 11th as well. Just I mean, it's always nice to have the draft as close to the start of the season as possible. That way, any injuries and things like that, you can kind
Yeah.
of draft for rather than after the fact. So yeah, I'm thinking within 2 or 3 days of the start of the season, I'll have both my teams picked.
Yeah. Like I said, mine is on the 3rd as of right now. So it is a little bit early. So I am worried about some injuries, but I am not too worried about my draft that much. In general, I'm not too worried about fantasy this year because I am the back-to-back champ. I've won my league 2 years in a row, and it's a keeper league as well. So I can build for next year if I need to. I don't need to win this year. I want someone else to win as well, so I might not be trying that
Oh
hard,
yeah.
as hard. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. If there's any trash talk at the draft, then maybe I'll step it up a little bit. But
No pressure on you. That's the
ex-
main thing. You got no pressure this year.
exactly right. Everybody wants to beat me. I got really nothing. Like, even though I'm the back-to-back champ, I got nothing to lose. I got my name on the trophy twice in fantasy hockey. It's all good. But we do have to be careful what we say because we haven't had our drafts yet. So we don't need to release too much information. I was very cautious making these notes because I know that some guys in my league listen to this podcast.
I
And I
mean,
don't
they
want to say
should. If you're the two-time champ, they
exactly. They
should
got
pick
it.
up some pointers. So
Exactly. So I will be giving some advice. And I'm also we're going to be doing a fun segment later on. I won't say it right now, but stay tuned for that. Something to do with my fantasy league as well. Yeah, so I want to talk about your team last year. How did that draft go? Who did you have on your team, and what was the result?
Well, I was quite happy with my team. I think I did a lot of research, so it was nice to have that pay off. I don't have the order in front of me. It's since been taken off of Yahoo, but remembering back, I Gensel and Hamilton and Zibanejad were all kind of mid-round picks for me, which all ended up being great picks. Obviously, I mean Hamilton getting injured wasn't ideal, but I was able to kind of work around that a bit. And Gensel obviously getting injured too wasn't ideal, but I managed to trade him off. I think I got Crosby in return.
Okay,
Kind of a
right.
package, a 2-for-2 or something. Managed to get Crosby in return.
So is yours a keeper league? I forget.
It was supposed to be, but now most people in the league somehow and for some reason decided to not make it a keeper league. So I definitely wasn't too happy about that. We're starting kind of from scratch this season, and it'll be a keeper league starting after this year,
Okay.
which I wasn't thrilled about, but what can you do?
So I guess that Crosby trade, then you got Crosby in exchange for Gensel, and I guess you gave up someone else, but that player must have been pretty low in the standings then to want Gensel, who was injured.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like he had kind of traded.
You
Well,
wanted him as a keeper.
The way our keeper league works is anyone drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds you can't keep.
Right.
So anyone after round 3 or 4 you get to keep, which I think is good. I think letting people keep like your first overall pick is like, who wants McDavid on the same team every year? Who wants Cooch?
Which is our league, which is my league. Yeah.
I think it's
I kind of
good
agree though. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good to have a bit of variety up at the top. So Crosby I couldn't have kept anyway, so it didn't work out too badly for me. But I imagine the guy felt a little bit bad that he won't get to keep Gensel for next year. But everybody's in the same boat, so not much you can do. My league, unfortunately, everyone decided to draft goalies early. So that kind of messed with plans a little bit. That did, however, mean Draisaitl dropped to me in round 3, which was crazy.
That's crazy. That is nuts.
Probably the best pick of the year in our league, I would say.
And you had how many guys? 8 or 10?
12.
Oh, you had 12. Okay. Wow, that's a deep league, and Draisaitl fell to.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't planning on picking him, but when he fell to me in the 3rd round, I couldn't pass it up. I picked Carlson in the 2nd, which turned out to not be a very good pick.
John or Eric? Eric Carlson? Eric Carlson. Yeah.
And then 1st round, don't even remember who I got in
your best player?
1st round at this point. Ovechkin.
Ovechkin. Okay.
Like I drafted 5th or 6th overall, so
okay.
You get him. But yeah, I mean overall, I was happy with it. I got just a couple, like a late round pick in Mantha ended up being really good for me, despite all my players got injured. But
he was injured too, right?
I still managed to finish 2nd in the regular season.
Okay.
Which I was pretty happy about. And then Markstrom, 9th round pick, ended up being really good. People weren't high on Markstrom, I guess, but he ended up having probably the best season of his career last year. So that helped me out. Yeah, like I said, I finished 2nd, but I should have been 1st. It was only because the last week of the year, the 2nd place team was playing one of the bottom teams, and that guy just had kind of given up at that point and didn't get the minimum goalie starts. So then he swept the week 13-0, and then the guy ended up beating me by like 3 points or something. So I should have been 1st. I was pretty angry. I definitely sent an angry message into the group chat to the guy.
I would too. Yeah.
Start his goalies, but I ended up, the season was stopped while we were halfway through the semifinal. So I was losing my semifinal matchup at that point, but it was still fairly close in most categories, so it could have gone either way. But yeah, so I finished top 4 at least. So yeah, overall was a pretty good year for me.
Did you guys consider doing any continuation of your league outside of Yahoo, or just on like a spreadsheet or anything like that?
No, there wasn't really much talk about that. I think we were all kind of just okay with. I think we decided on just nobody gets any money this year. We just moved the pool over to next year, and I think everyone was pretty okay with that. So that's kind of what we've been rolling with ever since.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
are you doing it with the same guys that you did it last year then, this year?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same group. I think one or two changes, but yeah, same 12 guys overall. And then the second league, it's obviously a new one of the guys that I'm doing the first league with. That's some people he knows, so he got
Uh-huh.
me into that league as well. So yeah, so I'm doing two leagues this year. It's my first time doing two leagues in the same season. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, being one points and one categories league, the research doesn't always coincide. So
No,
kind
it'll
of
change.
double the
Yeah.
amount of research if you wanna do well. And but I really enjoy doing the research, so it doesn't feel like work to me. It'll be nice to have sports finally. I've been
Yeah.
watching more NBA than I ever have in my life, just because it's something on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so sports being back is definitely going to make second semester a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, it's going to be jam packed with sports, and it's going to be a shortened season too, so it's going to fly by. But
Hmm.
yeah, NBA, NFL is in the thick of things right now too. And then who knows what's going on with the MLB? We haven't really heard anything from them. It's been a quiet off season as well. So is it going to be like the same amount of ads for you in both leagues as well? Is there like any considerable changes in terms of waiver pickups?
No, I think both leagues are just kind of standard waivers with the rolling list and then
You can
drop to free agency.
edit your lineup every day,
Yeah,
that
edit
stuff?
your lineup
Okay.
every day. I think both leagues were doing 4 ads. Maybe we'll push it to 5, but I think we're pretty solid with 4. I think
Okay.
5 gets to be a little bit much. I think 4 is kind of an optimal number, and then I think we have 2 IR spots for both leagues, so I
Hmm.
think that's more than enough room to work with. I think this year, especially, weekly moves are going to be so critical if you want to do well, just with the fact that there's going to be series going on every week. Like, you're going to
Yeah.
want matching up if a team's playing Detroit, if a team's playing Ottawa, if a team's playing any of the bottom teams, you're going to want to be looking for players on the team that they're facing, just to optimize points
Yeah.
and everything like that. So yeah, I think this year more than ever, weekly pickups streaming is going to be so important, and even on the goalie side too. Just looking at, because backups are going to get, I I could honestly see most teams doing like a 60-40 split, 65-35 split. Even the ones with kind of bona fide number ones will still have to rest their guys every
Uh-huh.
once in a while, especially if they're playing kind of back to back to back nights. They'll definitely
Especially
have
if
to
it's
get some
against the
rest
same
days.
team. You don't want the
Yeah,
players that you
exactly.
don't want the skaters facing the same goalie every time, because that's
Yeah,
when you
no, for
find their
sure. They'll start
weaknesses.
to, yeah. So I think this year, last year I was the same. I don't believe in picking a goalie anywhere unless you have to. If your league goes away where you're gonna lose out on a decent goalie if you don't pick a goalie in the earlier rounds, I think ideally you should go until at least round 5 without picking a goalie. I
Okay.
think this year that is definitely more doable. Just the fact that even the workhorse starters are not going to be starting that crazy number of games.
Hmm.
I think you can definitely afford to fade goalies later into the draft, and you just, in those places, you pick up a great D, you pick up a great winger in the earlier rounds when everyone else is looking at goalies. I think, especially in a categories league where goalie categories might be worth a quarter or a third at most of the total categories, you've got to focus early on wingers and defense, because those are the two hardest positions to find later in the draft.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I think this year, if you're not big on goalies, it's the best year for you, because you can really fade them late into the draft.
I agree with that. Yeah. In past years, I would say that if you have like a stud on the board, not in the first round, you can't take a goalie in the first round, but second round, third round, and a guy like Vasilevsky is there, a guy like
Well,
Rask is there,
yeah, that's the
then
exception for
yeah,
sure.
but maybe not this year. This year, maybe you could get a Vasilevsky in the 3rd round, 4th round. Like you said, like a lot of teams will be doing some sort of fringe with their starter goaltender, I would say. Like Jack Campbell, he might get a lot more starts. And if you're looking at the Leafs, it looks like they're going to be winning a lot of games this year in the Canadian division, hopefully. And then, maybe Campbell is a great sleeper pick, potentially, or just a guy that you can keep on your bench and just makes you get those goalie starts that you need. In my league, I think it was 4 goalie starts that you needed per week. But we did have more ads. We had 7 ads a week. You can do 7 ads. You can do 1 ad a day. And it's just a good like daily thing, I guess. You go on the fantasy app.
You can only do 1 ad a day, or you could do like
you can
all
do
7 in a day?
You can do all 7 in a day if you want. Yeah.
That would be interesting, actually, if you could just do kind of 1 ad per day. That would make it a little bit interesting,
Yeah.
But I don't even know if Yahoo has that capability to let you do that.
Maybe. I'm not sure. Because in the other league that I was in, and I did a points league and a categories league last year as well. The categories league is where I won, but the points one, I think I finished last. And that was with some Ryerson people. And it's not the best league because you can't change your lineup every day. You set your lineup on the Monday and that's it. And then that's your lineup for the entire week. So like it's critical to set a good lineup. You have to do a lot of research. Like you have to look into the matchups. Like, okay, how many games is this guy going to play this week? What teams is he playing against? Stuff like that. And I just stopped caring at that point. Like it's just a lot of research that went into it. And like, that's my weekend too. Like I've got schoolwork to do for Monday. I don't really want to do it. And also it was a $70 buy-in. Yeah.
I maybe would have cared a bit more if I were you.
I cared at the beginning. Yeah. And I don't remember my team. The draft was so important in that league though, just because of the ads. Like, and I don't think we could do. Actually, no. You can do. I think unlimited ads. But say if you add a guy midweek,
yeah,
you can't. That guy just doesn't go into your lineup right away.
Yeah, it doesn't process until the Monday or the Sunday.
Exactly, which is ridiculous, and I think so.
Yeah, it's definitely our basketball league last year was like that, and I don't know if no one really cares in the league, then it's fine. But I find if most of the guys actually kind of know what they're doing a little bit and care a little bit, then it's way better to have daily changes and daily ads, because it just makes it so much more interesting and engaging for the people that actually care.
Yeah. So yeah, last year in my draft, I had how many teams? We had 8 teams last year in the league. And since I finished first the year before, I had the 8th overall pick. And it's a snake draft, so it's back-to-back. David Pasternak fell to me at 8. And I think that's a really good pick, because Pasta was like top 3 in scoring all of last season. And then I drafted Vasilevsky with my next pick. And that some may say that that's early for a goalie, but in my eyes, and I don't know if it's just me, but I get really angry if my goalies don't do well. The year before, I had like mediocre goalies, and I forget who they were, but they would lose me the week essentially. And I have the best forwards, the best defense, and then my goalie just shits the bed. I wanted to assure that I had an elite goaltender. So I got Vasilevsky, and like obviously he's insane. He won me my league because we continued our league into the playoffs. And It wasn't until it came down to the last game 6 of the Stanley Cup final. It was a category league. I think I was winning like 7-5 or something. Vasilevsky got a shutout in the last game.
Wow.
And that was huge for me, and that obviously helped his save percentage and goals against and wins. So yeah, that won me the league. So and then I drafted Huberdeau. I traded for John Carlson mid-season, which was huge. I still can't believe that I got John Carlson. Like, that's a good keeper for next year too. He was having like the season of his career. I don't think I had to give up too much as well in that trade. I wish I could pull it up, but So yeah, draft coming up. Do you have a strategy heading into the draft, or you kind of just like follow the draft board and just like wing it essentially? Or do you have like a strategy? I want to draft a forward first, then I want to draft my goaltender in the first 3 rounds, or I want to make sure I have a stacked decor. Like what are your intentions?
Well, I definitely have a plan going into the draft. Whether or not it comes to fruition as the draft goes on is a completely different story. Last year, like I said, with all those goalies being taken in the first 2 rounds, kind of threw a wrench into my plans going into the draft. But
Yeah.
I think the most important 2 positions to draft early are wingers and defense, because late in the draft, it's a lot harder to find production, especially in a points league, from wingers and defense. So I think obviously in the first round, you're going to be picking the best guy that falls to you. It's pretty hard to mess up a first round pick. It's kind of the consensus among everybody.
Unless you draft a goalie.
Well, yeah, in my
Which
opinion, if you're
happened,
drafting a goalie, if it's Vasilevsky, it might be justified. But if it's anyone other than Vasilevsky, I would be wondering what you're thinking drafting a goalie in the first round.
Do you draft a defenseman in the first round? Would you say that, or is it primarily forwards? Like right now, if you look at the defensemen out there, maybe John Carlson, but that's also a risky pick. And we can get into that later. But do you think a defenseman should be drafted in the first round?
I don't think there's one defenseman that I would say for sure is a first round pick. Like you said, Carlson might be the closest thing to that, but like you looked at Burns, he was a solid first round pick last year and he ended up not really performing. Carlson was a solid second round pick last year. He ended up not performing. It was those mid round guys like Yossi, Hamilton. Those are the first 2 that come to mind. I'm sure there was a couple more.
Quinn Hughes, even Cale
Quinn
McCarr.
Hughes, McCarr, yeah, those names like that kind of came out of nowhere. Most of those guys, I mean, Yossi and Hamilton were kind of established. Yossi more so than Hamilton, but they both had crazy years.
Yeah.
So this year, I think Carlson near kind of the end of the first round, you might be able to justify that pick. But besides that, like I said, you're picking the best guy that falls to you. Ideally, I think you go with a winger. The wingers got a little bit more scarce with Cooch being out for the year. That takes him out of the conversation completely. Pasternak being injured until kind of middle of February kind of puts his value down. I could see kind of mid second round if you're going to draft him, even early second round. I think it's justifiable. He's just that good of a player in my opinion. Marchand being injured until kind of middle of January, end of January might affect his value a little bit. You don't know if he's going to be ready right at the start of the year. He might miss a week or 2, but honestly, I think he's still probably a second round pick, if not late first round pick. I don't think he'll miss that much time. But yeah, ideally you're picking a winger in the first round. Second round, it kind of gets into that range of defense that I was talking about. Hamilton, Yossi in there.
Wait, I just want to clarify. When you say winger, do you also just mean you mean forward or just strictly a winger?
Just strictly a winger.
So but what about Connor McDavid?
Well, no, that's what I mean. The best guy that's going to fall to you, you pick him. But ideally, if you're in the position to pick a winger, you're going to want to pick a winger. But guys like Draisaitl, for example, being a center left wing, eligibility
that's perfect.
So key. He's a perfect guy. I mean, he'll be probably a top 3, top 4 pick. But a guy like him is perfect to get. You slot him into either left wing or center. It's great to have kind of those dual eligibility players. A guy I'll even get into to kind of a sleeper off the bat.
Right.
Stamkos. In my points league at least, he's kind of 24-ish ranked. I'm sure he's kind of around that in the Cats league as well. I think with Cooch out, he has that triple eligibility. I think center, left wing, right wing.
Yeah,
He carries that over from last year. I think that's so valuable. If you can get him in a 12-team league right at the end of the second, you're laughing. I think he could be a first-round pick this year, kind of late first round. But if you can get him kind of early second round, mid second round, I think you should definitely go for him just based off of Cooch being out alone, I think he's shown he's capable of putting up points by himself, and
Yeah.
that triple eligibility is just so incredibly valuable to have someone that can play all three forward positions is amazing to have. Yeah, so kind of my ideal, like I said, you're picking wingers and defense early. I think centers, I mean, I guess we'll get into kind of later rounds in a bit, but I think centers this year, as they are most years, are very deep. You can get centers later into the draft that it's definitely a gamble, but I think there's a few names in there that are pretty solid, like you can kind of count on to be half decent players. But just those point getting defensemen and those solid points and peripheral wingers are so hard to come by as you get into the mid rounds that you need to use your first couple round picks on those positions for sure.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I think you got to be careful if you do take a defenseman early. But yeah, wingers is probably your best bet. Like there's so many different fantasy leagues as well. Like some of them, like mine for example, we don't even have winger or center slots. It's just forward, strictly forward. So it does change from league to league how many guys you have on your team in terms of how many forwards can you have, how many defense can you have, how many goalies. So it does vary. So keep in mind what we're saying. But yeah, I do agree with that for sure. I'd say like, and the way that I did it in fantasy basketball as well as like in the fantasy basketball draft that we just did, I found that a lot of guys were just falling to me. Like there were so many guys who had a high projection, a high ADP that were just dropping a lot. And you got to capitalize on those players. Like there was a lot of good valued players in that draft that just kept dropping, but their rank is so high, like you have to take them. So I think you have to capitalize on those opportunities. But I think now we can get into overrated players, sleeper picks. It does vary from league to league though, because if I'm looking at the Yahoo rankings in my league for a guy like, I don't know, Sidney Crosby, for example, his rank might be different than Tyler's Yahoo league.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely dependent. Like obviously the main two things, whether it's a points league or a cats league, that's gonna significantly affect the rankings. But yeah, like Yahoo tailors the rankings to the league settings of your individual league. So
Exactly.
like Aiden said, this might not be line up exactly with what your league is saying, but usually they're not vastly different. Obviously, like when you're talking about a cats league versus a points league, they will be different, but among cats leagues and among points leagues, they're usually fairly comparable.
And depends what cats you're actually
well,
doing.
yeah, exactly.
Too.
And then there's banger leagues or non-banger leagues. And so
Yeah.
it really, there's a lot of change that can happen, but
For sure.
at least the names that I'm putting out there, I think are guys that are pretty cross-compatible among a bunch of different leagues. And if they're not, I will say whether or not I think they're more of a bangers league or more of a cats league or more of a points league guy.
Okay.
But yeah, where did you want to start? Regressions or?
I think we'll start with regressions. We'll go overrated to start. And in my league, he's ranked 13th from the Winnipeg Jets, Blake Wheeler. And this is a guy who has been pretty consistent, but I don't think he's going to keep it up. He's getting old. He is not prime time Blake Wheeler anymore, 28, 29. He's getting up there. Patrick Laine isn't doing good. Mark Scheifele's kind of taken over. The Jets, like, they're not the best team. They're not.
Oh yeah, they're definitely second worst in
the division for sure. So Blake Wheeler, to have him ranked 13th on Yahoo in my league is ridiculous. Almost top 10. That's crazy to me. I could see him top 30 potentially. Maybe.
Oh yeah.
Maybe top 25. Like he's a good pick. Like you could get him late in the round and he can be consistent for you, but he's not going to have those explosive 4-point games, hat-trick performances like a top 10 player, like a top 15 player will get you, you know?
Agreed.
There's so many better guys. Like Sebastian Aho is ranked below him. Like take him. Like he's a young stud. He can put up points. He's playing with Svechnikov. Get him. I got some other ones here as well, but do you have one on mind right now?
For me, it was harder to find kind of the top guys for me. I kind of went mid
Okay,
round players.
sure.
So before I start, my main thing that I look for is a stat. It's called IPP, individual point percentage, and that basically just measures the amount of goals or assists a player is involved in while they're on the ice. So it's a percentage number. So like the league average for forwards is around 68 to 70. And the
Yeah.
league average for defensemen is, I mean, that really gets skewed down because there's the defensemen that don't do anything offensively and the defensemen that do things offensively. So it averages about 30, but the more offensive guys will kind of be about 40-ish percentage. And then obviously the guys that don't really do much offensively will kind of be lower than 30. So that percentage is kind of it's not a good gauge for everyone. It kind of more measures players that drive the play. So players like Crosby, players like Carlson, players like Malkin, players like the top players are going to have ADPs, or sorry, not ADPs, IPPs kind of
Yeah.
in the high 70s, mid 80s
Okay,
range.
that's pretty good. Yeah.
So that, like, when you see a guy like that, he's driving the play, and the vast majority of the time, a guy with that high of an IPP will be a top 30 guy in any league.
So
So yeah,
is that stat in Yahoo, or do
no,
you have to look that out?
you have
Yeah.
to look that up. It can be a little bit hard to find if you just kind of Google the player name and IPP. The website I use is Natural Stat Trick. Natural
Right,
Stat
right.
Trick. That's a good site for it, and it kind of breaks it down by year. So with IPP, I kind of look for guys that have a big kind of change based on their performance last year and their performances in years before.
Mm-hmm.
If they're kind of if they're still a good player, but they average kind of a 60, 58 IPP. Sorry, I'm going to get mixed up with all these acronyms. IPP, if they average that's okay, because some players just don't drive the play as much as others.
A little bit of change of scenery.
Yeah, a little
Tyler
bit.
had to move. He's getting some work done in his basement, so a little bit of banging. But hey, we're good now. We're all set up and we're back and ready to go. So Tyler, Ryan Ellis. Ryan Ellis is your overrated player.
Yes, Ryan Ellis. So back to the IPP thing. I look at his IPP last year. It's 48%, which for a defenseman is quite high. Usually the points defenseman will kind of be sitting around high 30s, low 40s. So that number is very high for a defenseman like him. And in past years, he's been kind of sitting around the mid 30s. So that to me kind of points to a regression on his point numbers. So I don't think he was almost kind of a point a game guy last year. So I don't think he'll be anywhere close to that in a 56 game series or a 56 game season. I think probably 25, 30 points, maybe 35 pushing the top end. So yeah, I don't think he's somebody you should reach for this year. If he falls to you kind of around his ADP, I would go for it, but he's definitely not someone to look for as a sleeper.
Okay, interesting. Because yeah, in past years, you would think Ryan Ellis could be a guy who does fall late in the draft, and you might want to take him. But what do you think is like an ideal round if you do want to take a guy like Ryan Ellis?
I could honestly see people kind of, if they lose out on a top defenseman, I think he would be kind of one of those prime guys to reach for, kind of the secondary, kind of the 1B defenseman to
Yeah,
go for.
secondary tier. Yeah.
I could see him being one of the guys to reach for. So I could definitely see him going kind of maybe 5th, 6th round, which I think is too high for him. I would definitely, if you can get him kind of, if you need a defenseman, you're in kind of 7th, 8th round. He'd be a good guy, good solid guy to pick there. But yeah, anything kind of before 7th round, I think you should hold off a little bit. I think there's some guys out there with higher upside than him. So yeah, if he falls to you, he's still going to be a decent guy, puts up good peripherals, he'll put up still a decent amount of points. But yeah, he's definitely not someone you should be reaching for.
And yeah, he did have a pretty good season last year, I would say. I think he was injured for a little bit at the end of the year. I'm pretty sure, because he was on my team, And he put up some good performances early on in the year, and he was looking like a great pick for me. But yeah, I would say that he probably isn't going to keep that up, and he looked a bit on the decline last year, so he's probably going to stay on the decline. But if you can get him late in your draft, like as a number 3, number 4 defenseman, I think he's pretty solid in that
For
spot.
sure.
But the top 2, it's a little bit iffy there. The next guy that I have on my list, and he's ranked 52 in Yahoo. His projected draft pick is 52. That's Claude Giroux. And 50 for Giroux, like people would think, yeah, he's a top 50 player in the league still. He's a first line center on Philadelphia. But I'm not a big fan of Giroux right now. He isn't the best fantasy player. I can't see him having that big game and scoring a lot of goals and getting points. He is more of that, I would say, even more defensive minded now towards the end of his career. He's getting up there in age. So I wouldn't say he's a big standout guy. Also, if you look at Philadelphia, like they have Couturier. He is probably their best fantasy player, I would say. They have Voracek, who's decent as well, but he didn't have the best season last year as well. The Flyers in general, they're more of a defensive team. They don't put the puck in the net too much. Vigneault is more of a defensive minded coach. They have a stacked decor, so I think they focus more about around defense. So I would stay away from Giroux. Like I don't know if he's a starter. If you have like a 7 forward setup in your league, I don't know if he makes the cut. I would say he's probably on your bench. And then another guy I have is Johnny Gaudreau. And Gaudreau is still one of the best players in the league, but in terms of fantasy and last year, it was an awful year for him. He was a really, really bad player. So I would say he's overrated because of the Yahoo rank 46 right now. I don't know if 46 is a good number for him. But if he drops, then he could be a sleeper as well. So I don't
Oh
know. It's a
yeah.
little bit of both for Gaudreau on that end. But the same, like I just don't think Calgary or Philadelphia has that elite offense. Like Sean Monahan wasn't really clicking with Gaudreau last year. Elias Lindholm, he had a good season, I think 2 years ago, his first year with Calgary, and he had a decent year this past year, but they don't have that explosive offense. Mark Giordano wasn't what we thought he was going to be last year. They lost TJ Brody as well, so we got to keep that in mind. So yeah, I would say Blake Wheeler, Claude Giroux, and Johnny Gaudreau are guys that you should stay away from at their projected rank. But if Gaudreau falls to like 60, yeah, I would consider taking him. Giroux, I would stay away from Giroux. I think he could be a major flop this year. And Wheeler, I think that is probably the safest bet out of the 3, but definitely not top 15. Take him in the 30s. So yeah, do you have any more guys that we should avoid early on or
Yeah,
mid rank?
I have two guys that are getting kind of a lot of attention after their years last year. I don't know. Did I ever tell you about how going into last year I had this weird gut feeling about Fiala that I thought he was going to do
Oh,
well?
maybe. Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was, I don't know what prompted me. I just had this gut feeling and it turned out I was right. I remember kind of near the end of the year before the lockdown, he was kind of a top 10 player for like 2 or 3 weeks. He was just going on a tear.
Yeah.
But this year, he goes from one of my deep sleeper picks to one of my flop or regression picks. Um, I think last year his IPP was 80%, which is
Wow.
a crazy
That's
number. That's
crazy.
like
Yeah.
almost Crosby Malkin numbers, which I don't think is at all sustainable for a player like him. He kind of went on that tear, like I said, at the end of last year. I don't think that kind of production is sustainable when he's playing on a team that'll be kind of a lower end team in the Wild. His shooting
Uh-huh.
percentage was also 13%, which was I think 3 or 4% higher than his career average. So that should see a little bit of regression in some goals. So yeah, I've been seeing him ranked. I think kind of teetering like around 80, 90, something like that, which I think is way too high for him. I
Yeah,
think
it's gotta be lower.
if you can get him in like double digit round, like 10th, 11th round type
Yeah,
thing, I
that's
think
good.
you should go for it. I think he still does have potential to be in a 56 game season, maybe like a 40-ish point player, maybe a little bit less. The problem with him, he kind of lacks a little bit in peripherals. So if you're in a banger league, he won't be
Right, he
he
can't
won't be
hit,
doing
won't
he
block
won't be doing
shots.
yeah, he won't be doing those things for you. But in a points league, he still definitely has some late round value if you don't draft wingers early and you need kind of
Yeah.
a guy who's going to be getting a lot of minutes on a Minnesota team that's kind of starved for offense a little bit. I think he's a good guy to reach for.
I think
Um,
I think in my league, even with a guy like Fiala, like he probably would get drafted in the teens, but I could see at some point of the season someone just drops him and then he just becomes a waiver guy.
yeah,
And that is a good waiver ad because Kevin Fiala, he's probably the best forward on Minnesota.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sad to say, I would think I agree
So
with that.
so if Minnesota is playing a bad team in their division and you need to pick up someone, you want to use one of your ads, Kevin Fiala is a good pick because if you want someone to score on Minnesota, it's probably going to be him.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
I definitely still think he's a good late round guy. I don't think you should expect him to build on last season. I think you should
no,
expect at most like probably 80-90% of what he was last year, but I think more realistically probably falls down to about 60 or 70% of what he did last year.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, one thing I wanted to add, I think people tend to be a little bit too scared at picking players on bad teams. And this is something I was listening to the Fantasy Hockey podcast a couple days ago, and they're really big on this, is don't be afraid to pick a good player on a bad team. A first line guy, even a second line guy who gets top power play minutes on a bad team is way more valuable than a third line player on the Lightning,
yeah,
for example. Like
right,
you
right.
shouldn't shy away from guys just because he's on Ottawa, he's on Winnipeg,
Detroit,
whatever.
yeah,
You shouldn't fade guys just because they're on bad teams. When they're a top player on a bad team, that just means more minutes, more opportunities, more power play time for them, which bodes well.
right.
Yeah, so one last player for me for regression, kind of a guy who came out of nowhere last year. He was a kind of a fantasy darling. Was Tony DeAngelo,
Yeah.
defenseman on the
Is his name
Rangers.
Tony or is it Anthony? Anthony Tony?
I
Like, what's
think
his official name?
on Yahoo it's Tony, but it started Anthony. So I don't know.
Yeah.
He might prefer Tony. Who knows? We'll call him Tony because it's shorter. But yeah, his IPP last year, 54% as a defenseman is pretty crazy high. Kind of Carlson is known as a top guy for that, and he sits around 49-50%. So for a guy like Tony DeAngelo coming into his kind of his second full year in the NHL, you could see that sophomore slump a little bit,
Yep.
Which is common. And
Is
I
it
just
only
don't
his
think
second year? He was a rookie last year? Or
he wasn't exact, but I
but it
think
was
like
his
his
first like
full season. I
yeah.
think he might have
It
had
was his
one.
first good season.
Yeah, let's say his first good season.
Yeah.
But yeah, so his IPP, I don't think that's sustainable at all for a player like him. He has so many guys around him that are competing for minutes, especially on that top power play. You have, well, Fox is the
Truba.
main guy, and then Trouba is even kind of the more established guy. That if DeAngelo falters a little bit, I could definitely see him losing minutes quickly because they have other options back there to replace him with pretty easily. And again, his shooting percentage, 10% as a defenseman, is quite high. I don't think that's sustainable in terms of goal numbers. So I could see a big regression in points from him. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's okay in terms of banger cats. He's not anything special, but he's definitely not he's better than Fox in that regard, but he's not a guy that is going to round out your stat sheet all the time. So that bumps down his value in bangers leagues a little bit. But
Right.
I've been seeing his value, I think in the 60s, maybe mid 60s. So I think
That's high.
at
That's
that
pretty
position,
high.
I might be reaching on that. It might be a little bit lower,
Let me
but
see what he is in
um,
mine.
yeah, show me yours. This is a points league, right?
Um no, Cats League.
Oh, well, that's fine then. it should be close to the same. But yeah, like
and even with D'Angelo, like we saw it towards the end of last. He's ranked 132 on the season. His projected rank is 207.
207. In mine, okay, yeah,
So
mine,
so Yahoo is kind of treating him like we're treating him right now.
yeah,
But yeah, we did see it towards the end of last year. Like he was hot, like really hot at the start, but he cooled off so much once Adam Fox started playing better and Trouba started playing better, because Trouba was new to the Rangers last year. It took him some time to get a role there, a proper role. And D'Angelo came out of nowhere, but yeah, and there's some other guys on the Rangers that I want to talk about. I guess we can do that now. Moving on to sleeper picks, Capo Caco.
yeah,
It's the
he
guy
was one
that
of my sleeper picks.
Yeah, Capo Caco. I took him. I took him last year in my draft, and I held on to him to about, I would say, maybe mid-season, maybe a bit less than that. But yeah, he just wasn't producing at all. I think he only had like 1 goal in his first maybe 2 months playing, 2 goals in his first 2 months, something like that. His current rank right now in my Yahoo league is 363.
Wow.
That's very, very, very low, but that makes him the perfect sleeper. Like you could get him in one of the last 2-3 rounds of your draft. They have Lafreniere now. Maybe they put him with Kako, because you already have Zibanejad and Panarin. Lafreniere on Kako on your second line with a guy like Ryan Strome. That becomes a pretty dominant line, and I definitely wouldn't sleep on Kako. Like he is still 19 years old, I believe. He was one of the best Finnish players to ever come out of their program. He was great at the World Junior Championships. He went second overall for a reason, and I still think that he will be better than Jack Hughes. I would take him ahead of Hughes still.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, just
Capo Caco, yeah.
even if it's just based on the fact that he's a winger and Hughes is a center, I would lean towards Kako over Hughes this year for sure. Especially kind of, I think that division is so tough this year, the East, with all the firepower. I think a team like New Jersey is going to get beat up on, and that can, on a young player, that has a pretty kind of adverse effect on him. He might get demoralized not being in the league that often. If he's losing every night, he might crack. So I think the Rangers will be kind of fighting for a playoff spot in that division for sure. So I think Kako playing with a guy like Lafreniere, potentially moving up to playing with Panarin and Zibanejad if he performs, it's tons of upside. In my league, the points league, he's ranked 217. So even at that spot, that's outside of the draft in most leagues. In a 12-team league, that's beyond the draft. So,
and especially if you're in a keeper league,
you
got to take this guy.
Yeah, and your last 2 to 3 rounds, that's not the place you want to pick the safe guy with the safe floor
no.
The
high risk.
It's all about, that's where, if you're ever going to take a risk in the draft, that's the perfect place to do it, because if 2 weeks into the year, 3 weeks into the year, they're not doing, I mean, a guy like Kako, you'd want to hold on a little bit longer, but the idea, if a guy's not performing, a few weeks into the year, you drop him and you get a guy off the waiver wire, and you're not losing anything. So
exactly.
I think Kako is a great guy to pick in one of the last rounds. To pivot off of Kako, another young Finnish player, high draft pick, 4th overall.
Okay.
Jesse Puljujarvi.
Interesting.
On the Edmonton Oilers, obviously.
Will he play? Is he going to play? That's the question.
If he does, I love him. He's ranked 269 in my points league. I think, again, that's outside the draft in most cases. If he gets any exposure at all to either McDavid or Draisaitl, I love him as a pick. If he plays on the team, he will start the year in the top 6 group, whether it's on the first line with McDavid or on the second line with Draisaitl is who knows at this point. They might want to stick with Yamamoto with, I think Draisaitl was the guy he had chemistry with last year. So that could see him up. I think Daily Faceoff has him projected first line with McDavid right now. If he starts the year first line with McDavid and you can get him in one of the last 3 rounds of your draft, I think you have to. You would be dumb not to. again, it's just a guy you can drop if he doesn't do well. You're not losing anything. If it's a keeper league and he ends up like Patrick Maroon put up
I know,
what,
yeah.
25 goals in a season playing alongside McDavid. If he can put up 25 goals a year, Puljujarvi was great in the Finnish league last year. He put up, I think, a point a game or almost a point a game.
Yeah.
And yeah, playing against men in Finland. So if he can come back and carry that, maybe it was just that's all he needed, 1 year to get back in scoring, find the back of the net, playing a Finnish league is a European standard. It's one of the top leagues there. So yeah, I think he's a great option to pick late in the draft. If you miss out on Kakko, he's a great secondary guy to go for. If you want another Finnish winger, he's your man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and most of these guys that you will find late in the draft will be the young guys. And those are the guys that you want to take your chance on because they haven't reached their full potential yet. You don't want to be in the last couple rounds of your draft and taking a veteran, a guy who's like mid-30s or even in his 30s. You want to take a young guy who has that potential that's through the roof. And yeah, if you get a guy who can play alongside of McDavid, that's huge. Like I remember last year, Tyler Ennis was a frequent guy that I would pick up on waivers because he would play with McDavid. Or Kyler Yamamoto. That's why he was so valuable to the end at the end of last season because he was getting the opportunity to play in the top six. And yeah, Puljujarvi is 21, 22 years old right now. He has tremendous potential. So definitely take him as well, I would say. Yeah, it's a good one. Another guy, just to keep with the trend of these young guys, I guess. And it's a guy who hasn't played in the league yet. It's the German Tim Stützle. Stützle. He's ranked three. Stützle. Someone got a jersey at Hockey Life of his name.
Wow.
Actually, so yeah, diehard Ottawa fan. Let's hope he plays this year. He's ranked 390th in my league, and if he plays, I think he goes straight into the top six with Ottawa, and he becomes one of their best forwards right away. And like you said, don't be afraid to draft guys who are on bad teams. Stützle and Brady Tkachuk, that could be a pretty good combination. And yeah, if you can get him towards the end of your draft, ranked in the last second, third, or fourth last round of your draft, you got to take him. Stützle is a big name. Yeah. Who else you got?
A guy for me, a guy I talked about who I drafted last season, Anthony Mantha.
Yes, I have him
league,
as well. Mm-hmm.
He is ranked 166, which is kind of last couple rounds of a draft, which I think is way too low.
He's 213 in mine. Wow, that's even worse.
That's crazy. I think he's the top winger on Detroit by a long shot. He is good in points and bangers. He hits a lot in a points league. He gets some PIMs for sure. He definitely helped me in those two categories, and he just scores a ton.
Yeah,
he's
power play
goals
too.
Power play goals. Yeah, he's top guy on that power play with Larkin. Yeah, I think at 166, he has the potential to be a top 70, 80 guy, maybe even pushing it even more.
If he stays healthy, and I think the injuries are behind him now. He had a full offseason to rest, and yeah, Detroit didn't really improve too much on their team, so he still is
the top winger.
Yeah, their top guy.
Goal scoring, left wing, right wing eligibility too, so you can swap him around. And yeah, I think he's just a great power forward in today's NHL. You mentioned the injuries. He's still young. He's still 24, 25. He's just entering his prime. I think injuries don't really linger that much at this age. I don't think it's anything to be too concerned about. If he's healthy, he's a great player to have. And I think at 166, even if you reach for him at kind of in a 12-team league, get him kind of 10th round, which would be kind of 120-ish value. I think you have potential to get a guy who could go easily top 75, if not top 60, if he does really well this year, which I think he has all the tools and all the capability to do so.
I think even another guy you can look at on Detroit is Bobby Ryan.
Wow, that's a deep sleeper.
He is ranked 346th in my league. And Like, he could sneak into the top 6. He can put up some goals. It's Bobby Ryan. Like, he is a known goal scorer. He's a former 35 goal scorer in the league. I know that those years are behind him, but if you give him an opportunity on Detroit, he's probably going to be playing, I would say, first line power play. You can put him alongside of Larkin and Mantha. Yeah, on the opposite side, he could be banging home a lot of power play goals for you. Definitely take him last round if he's there, because
That's a
he's
pretty deep sleeper. I don't know if I'd be that ballsy with a pick, but
really. Why, you just don't think he's gonna turn out?
I
He's gonna
mean,
be a big flop?
he's a good story, I guess. He kind of finished the year on a high note with that hat trick, which was pretty late in the year when he came back. I mean, yeah, he definitely has the potential. That's why Detroit signed him. They could get him for
Yeah,
cheap, and if he has a good year, trade him for a draft pick at the
exactly right.
deadline. And at that point, if he's with a trade in mind, he definitely loses a ton of value as soon as that trade goes through. But like you said, it's a last round pick. You have half a season of him putting up solid numbers, and then he gets traded. You can just drop him or try to trade him while his
Yeah,
value's high before he gets traded, and you get a decent guy in return. So yeah, I think he has the potential. I think he's, like I said, a little bit too deep of a sleeper for me, maybe. But
wow, okay,
hey, if you want
yeah.
to take a swing out of the park on him, then you could definitely find a player. But I think it could be a bit of a stretch, but that's what the last rounds are for. So yeah.
Exactly. High risk, high reward. Bobby Ryan's it. Yeah, I agree. Like, would I take him last round if he's there? It depends who else is on the board. Like, I would obviously take a guy like Kako or Puljujärvi or Stützle over Bobby Ryan. But I could see if Bobby Ryan gets hot in the first week, I'll pick him up.
Well, yeah,
If
even
he
just a guy
scores
to
a
put
couple,
on your watch list and
yeah,
just look to see how he's doing. If he gets off to a hot start, pick him up, see what he can do.
100%. Yeah. Two other guys that I have on my sleepers before we move on. Two defensemen. I have Mikhail Sergachev. He's ranked
Okay.
169. This guy had an insane playoffs. He puts up some crazy ice time minutes alongside of Victor Hedman, or he can play on the second pair with McDonough. Power play time, penalty kill time. He's good in the banger leagues as well. Big body, blocking shots. 169. He's got to be higher than that. He's on Tampa Bay too. He's a great defenseman. And you got to respect the guy for taking a little bit less money this offseason as well, because he should have gotten paid. So yeah, I definitely think Sergachev could be your number 3 defenseman on your team. 169 is ridiculous for him. And then I also have Tyson Berry,
Wow.
198.
I agree with you, but I would never pick him. Just too many
Yes,
scars. I
that's
could never
true.
pick him as a Leafs fan, but I definitely see where you're coming from. He has the potential to be good, but just based off of bias, I could not pick him.
Yeah, I probably couldn't pick him either. I don't think I could pick him either. Yeah, maybe last round, because I did have him when he was on Colorado, and he was good. He was like
Oh well,
my
yeah.
second best defenseman.
It's people in fantasy have short-term
This
memories. If
guy's
you look
good.
back to
Like,
2 years, he's a great player 2 years
yeah,
ago. He's one of the top offensive defensemen in the league 2 years ago, and that still carries some value. And I think change of scenery on a team that I think will be decent in Edmonton. I think they could. It's tough to gauge the Canadian division because kind of after the Leafs, it's pretty wide open.
let's hope.
I
Let's
think they could.
hope.
I think they could finish anywhere from second to like fifth.
Yeah,
So it's hard to judge. But yeah, I could definitely see Barry turning things around pretty quickly and having a good year this year.
and yeah, just put him on your power play. Darnell Nurse's minutes could go down. I don't know. I think Barry's a decent pick. I could see someone in my league taking him pretty early, honestly. And I don't know if that's a good pick, but if he's there in yeah, like we're saying, the range of like the last 3 rounds of your draft, if Tyson Berry is there and you need a defenseman, maybe even your number 4 guy, Barry's okay for right now. If you need a defenseman, if you're panicking and if you want to assure that you have a decent defensive core, you're looking for that final defenseman, I think Barry's a decent player that you can get after.
Mm-hmm.
except if you're a Leafs fan, then don't take him.
Yeah, I mean, if you want those flashbacks and PTSD, then maybe. But
Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't do it.
I still don't know what happened, but whatever.
We'll never
Whatever.
know. It's in the
Yeah.
past now, at least. Hopefully, Brody's better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Brody's going to be a bit of a different player.
Oh yeah, he's a
Yeah.
different skill set for sure. But hopefully,
Hopefully,
overall,
just be good defensively. That's all we can
yeah,
ask
that's
for.
all
You
I
know,
ask.
the bar isn't very high for you.
Exactly.
So,
You're stepping into some small shoes, so hopefully you can
yeah.
fill them. I have three more, but I'll be quick. I'll bang
Okay.
these three off. So one, Ryan Johansen.
Not a fan, but
He's in the
I don't know.
190s. He's in the 190s in my league. That is borderline not drafted in most.
And he's what, first line center on Nashville. Yeah. That's
Ryan Johansen, 196 in my points league ranked here. I think last year his IPP was 55%, which that's Tony DeAngelo had a 54% IPP last year. As a centerman, as a top centerman, there's no way he's has a share that low in points. The division they're in, I think maybe they're the third team in that division, fourth team in that division.
yeah.
They're pushing for a playoff spot in that division for sure. I could definitely see him bumping up well beyond 196. Maybe not into the top 100, but I could definitely see him being around kind of 110, 120 value. And if you can bump up 70 spots in ADP with him, go for it with a last round pick.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Then
I'm not a big fan of Ryan Johansen. I just want to say, like, he's not a first line center. He's borderline second line center. That's my thoughts on him.
yeah, well, we
Yeah.
differ there, but again, it's a late round pick.
No,
So,
I agree. Like, yeah, sleeper pick to get a first line center with your last pick. Like, yeah, you got to
yeah,
take him. You have to
exactly.
take him.
Exactly. And then two defensemen. I realized I was looking at my offensive, my forward list there. So two defensemen, one big name, terrible season last year, Erik Carlson. I think
Yeah.
maybe after last year, I wouldn't go for him I mean, obviously there's a point where you go for him. But I wouldn't pick him a little bit earlier in a Cats league, in a Bangers league especially, but in a points league, I think there's no way his value in my points league is 108. And
Yeah.
I think there's no way he's that low again this year. He was, before last season, he was considered probably the best defenseman in the league.
Mm-hmm.
For sure the best defenseman in the league.
His projected rank in mine is 256.
Yeah. At 256, that's undrafted. There's no way Erik Carlson. Obviously, I think these are subject to change. We're still pretty far out, and they usually do an adjustment closer to the start of the season. But 256 for a guy like Erik Carlson, even 108 for a guy like Erik Carlson, I think you have to gamble on it. If I'm picking in what round is that? The 9th round, and I see Erik Carlson's name there.
Yeah.
I don't know how you pass it up as your potentially your third defenseman. Hopefully by the 9th round,
that would be insane. That's a stacked
you should have picked
decor.
two defensemen by the 9th round as your third defenseman, Erik Carlson.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, that's good.
Obviously, Cats League, one of those first two has to be to fill out those banger categories if you're going to go Carlson in the third with your third defenseman pick. But if you have a top guy and a good bangers guy with your top two defensive spots, pound Erik Carlson in the 9th, 10th round in your draft for sure. And finally, another defenseman, and this is I was high on Dougie Hamilton going to the last year. I was really high on him, and it was because of Fantasy Hockey Podcast, so I can't take credit for this.
So is this the same thing? This is
my same feeling as Dougie Hamilton last year. Charlie McAvoy. As much as
banger league, yeah, I would say. I don't know about points.
League. Listen. As much as it pains me to pick a Boston player as a Leafs fan, if he is in my league, McAvoy is one. Well, I just had it up here. 110, maybe even lower. Let me just be sure. This is my top pick. I need to be sure. 140. 140
Yeah.
in my league. He is with Krug out. Who's taking that number one power play spot? Matt Grzelcyk?
Probably.
John
To be honest, it's probably Grizzly.
There's no way it's Grzelcyk over McAvoy. I don't see Grzelcyk. Even if he starts this season, I don't see him.
I'm not
holding
even
that
joking. I
position.
think it could be Grizzly. I'm not even kidding.
It could
Yeah.
be, but I don't see him holding that position over McAvoy throughout the whole season. Even if he starts there,
Yeah.
I think McAvoy, just based off of the fact that he's probably the only above average defenseman on that team, and he's a good defenseman. You can't deny that. He's a good defenseman.
Solid.
Being the top D man on that team, he's going to be playing 22 minutes plus easy.
Yeah,
every
you're
night.
right. Yeah.
If he gets power play one time and he's obviously top pairing, I think he has the potential to be, in a 56 game season, put up 45 to 50 points.
Wow. Really?
I'm really that high on him. If he gets top power
in a
play,
56 game season? That's what you
Yeah.
just said?
his
50
ceiling,
points?
His top end ceiling, 45 points. Let's say 45 points for me.
How many? I don't think this guy puts up points though.
I think he
need
could.
to.
Who else is going to put up points on that defensive core? Matt Grzelcyk put up 20 points last year.
Honestly, I think Boston will struggle. I think Boston will struggle a lot without Pasternak for the first month, without Marchand for a couple weeks.
But that's even more evidence. Somebody has to score points, and with
I guess
Pasta and Marchand out, I think
so.
McAvoy could definitely put up points this year. He hasn't shown that much point upside in the past, but that's because he hasn't needed to.
So
playing behind Krug, he hasn't needed to put up points. Now he's the guy.
So what you're telling me, 45 points. You're saying
that's top end ceiling.
Yeah.
That's top end ceiling.
But I'm just saying, like, that would be his career high in points in a shortened season. 45 points.
What's his career high?
32. 32 points. And he can put up some decent plus minus numbers and penalty minute. No, he's good plus minus. He's good in hits, blocks.
Yeah, he's already a solid, at one, I'm sure in a bangers league it's different. What's he in your, is your banger league, the cat league? No.
He's
I'm
worse.
sure I'll need to check. I'm sure I don't have it open here, but I'm sure his ranking is above 140 in a bangers league just because of
his season rank. Stats. His season rank for mine is also 140, but his projected rank in the draft is 322.
That makes absolutely no sense to me. 322.
I do remember him being pretty bad in my league last year, and also like our categories are points, goals, assists, points, plus minus, power play goals, power play assists, power play points, stuff like that. So that's probably why. But yeah, if you're going for hits and blocks, McAvoy is good, and I do agree. Like somebody on Boston has to score, but. I could see Grzelcyk having a big year, come to think of it. Maybe he's a sleeper pick that you could get after.
Maybe he would be ranked even lower than McAvoy.
Yeah.
So I think but I don't know. I have a gut feeling this year about McAvoy. I think he has the potential to have a breakout year offensively just based on the fact that there's nobody else.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see him breaking out. And sorry, one more, I have to mention his name. Just can't pass up the opportunity to mention Sergey Babrowski.
Yes. We had to talk about a goalie. Yeah.
I talked to one of my friends about him and how I said I wanted to pick him, but he seems to think in both our leagues he won't make it past kind of the 5th, 6th round, which
I think he will, for sure. Sure.
I hope so. He should. He really should. I really hope people aren't reaching that much on Babrowski. But
considering your league last year where everybody drafted goalies,
exactly.
It is tough. But definitely in my league, he will go past the 5th round. I think so. 100%.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, and if he's ranked 119 in my league, I think.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, Florida has gotten better over the offseason. They do look pretty good. Anthony Duclair was a great signing. And Babrowski, yeah.
And their defense got better. Radko Gudas and Nudivara are both solid defensive ads, in my opinion. Uyghur's only going to get better.
Yeah, Uyghur's
Ekblad is
good.
still a solid guy. So I think,
Still young.
yeah,
Yep.
in my league, he's actually ranked 168.
Yeah,
So
wow.
if you can get him, obviously he won't fall that low because he's a goalie. Goalies tend to get drafted a little earlier than their ADP just because there's so
Less
much
of them.
fewer of them.
Yeah.
But if you can get him kind of 8th-ish round,
Yeah, I think that's about right.
you have to swing on
Honestly.
him. In the 8th round with a goalie, at worst, he's a drop.
Yeah.
He's a drop. If
'Cause-
you really don't feel comfortable with him, you can draft 3 goalies. Put one on your bench, and if Babrowski fails, then you just drop him for a forward or drop him for another goalie. It's no risk picking up Babrowski with an 8th, 9th round pick. And
No,
I
it's
think
not.
there's no way he can be worse than last season. There's no way
No.
a goalie of his caliber can be worse. So at bare minimum, he's just a bad goalie and you drop him. And at best case scenario, he's a top goalie and he's playing in the worst division in
Yeah,
hockey.
if you need wins, if that's a
he's playing in the
category.
worst division in hockey. I think honestly, Florida has a chance to be 3rd in their division. I think it goes Tampa, Dallas, and then Florida, Carolina, and Nashville are all close in those 3
I think
spots.
Nashville's not close in my eyes. I think Dallas will also take a step back without Sagan.
Well, yeah, without Sagan to start.
I agree. Florida could finish top 2.
Florida's for sure competing easily top 4.
Mm-hmm.
And if Dallas can weather Sagan being out, and then when he's back, I think if they're in a good position, they'll be 2nd. But I think Florida, solid chance to be 3rd. I think at worst they'll be 4th unless Rene comes back or Saros has a great year. Saros played pretty well last year. He's another kind of sleeperish name.
Yeah,
to look
you're
out
right.
for. It could be a decent tandem. I think this year, great strategy going for a tandem.
Yeah.
And Saros should play a lot of games with Rene getting older. They're going to kind of want to transition him into being their starter. So he's definitely another guy to look out for. If both of them can have good years and guys like Johansen can bounce back. While I was looking through my IPP numbers, I noticed Nashville is one team. None of their players overperformed in IPP last year. Their top IPP was like low 70s, and I think it was Philip Forsberg.
Okay.
So they just that when you see a team that low IPP for everyone, that just means they're not getting lucky. It means they have no luck.
Yeah.
And I think that doesn't happen back-to-back years. You don't get unlucky for everyone in back-to-back seasons. So I think they're one team that could either they'll be about the same. I think even if they're not that good, they're still probably 5th in that division pretty easily. They're still competing for 4th, maybe depending on what Carolina and or Florida do. But yeah, we got into another sleeper, I guess, with Saros. But yeah, that's another name to look out for. I forgot even what led us here, but yeah.
You can't forget about the goalies. The goalies don't get enough love. So yeah,
I don't like goalies, but it's you need it's honestly my
you
friend
don't love goalies, bro.
My friend and I were talking. If we started our own league, we would just do no goalies. It's a crapshoot. At the end of the day,
goalies in fantasy does piss me off. Like I said, that's why I had to
5 in goalies, and
that's why
anything beyond that, it's like, oh, I don't know, this guy looks okay this week, I'll pick him.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, unless you can find that Jari or unless you can find that Binnington from the last 2 seasons, then your season looks great.
Do you draft Binnington? He was awful in the playoffs.
No, I don't think Binnington looks good, but I just mean the season that he broke out 2 years ago. If you found him that year, if you had Jari last year, then you were laughing throughout the season. But yeah, I guess we can maybe at the end talk about that. I'm going to try to find the Binnington and Jari this year. I made it my goal to look out for some names, so I found a couple names that I think have a chance. I think Saros is one of the guys that might have a chance to be that player.
Okay.
I found a couple others if you want me to just
let's get into that right now, because then we're going to jump into a little bit of a different segment.
Sure.
We have been going for a while, so I do
with
not
a slight
know.
Interruption.
We could go a lot longer and talk some other stuff too, or we could just cut it here. I'm not sure, but let's hear what you have to say first.
Yeah, so let me just pull up the names. Sleeper goalies. So I mentioned Saros, obviously, and then Kakinen
Capo Kakinen.
on the Wild.
Minnesota, yeah.
I think you look at the Wild goalies and you
That's
see
good, yeah.
Cam Talbot as probably their number one starter going into the year.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he's at all stable in that position. He had a decent year last year, but the couple of years before that, he was not good. Getting thrust back into a starter role, I don't know how well he does. Kako, young guy, did pretty well in the AHL. Looking to break through. I think he's 22, 23. I think he has a great chance to be a guy that breaks through. Another guy, Ville Husso, another Finn, who is the backup for Binnington on St. Louis. They got rid of Allen, traded him to the Canadiens, so he's kind of their only number two at this point, unless they go out and make a trade or free agent signing. I don't think there's that many goalies left on the market, so he's another guy to look out for. Young as well, decent numbers in the minors, so he could, like you said, Binnington was pretty bad. He could step in and maybe take over for Binnington.
Mm-hmm.
And then a final kind of two of them, because I think one of them has the edge for backup going into the year.
Is it Rangers?
Could change. No, not Rangers.
I'm
avoiding all goalies in that division. In that division. That division is just too crazy for me. I would not, unless it's the Islanders goalies, they're a different breed just because of their defensive play. But any other team, I'm staying pretty far away. It's Vancouver with Thatcher Demko and Michael DiPietro. I think
Braden Holtby. Yeah,
but last year Holtby was not a good goalie, and who knows if he doesn't get it. I think he has a chance. I think he could be another potential sleeper goalie. I wouldn't mind picking him up with kind of, if you miss out on Babrowski, going for him.
I think Demko, I think Demko's a stud. I think he is. You shouldn't underestimate him. You can draft him in rounds 10, 11 if you need to. If you need a goalie, because I think he's the 1A over Holtby.
Yeah.
Michael DiPietro. I don't know about Michael DiPietro, because that's your third string. Your third string.
I think with DiPietro is just injury and or Holtby just really.
I don't know if Holtby's going to be that bad, just because he's not going to be playing so much.
You really think he's 1B going into the season?
I think he's 1B. I think Demko has earned the 1A. He stole that series, or he didn't. They didn't win the series.
So too. I think so personally. I think so, but I don't know if Vancouver thinks so. I feel like they brought him in to kind of be that stopgap while they let Demko have another year or two as the understudy to.
I think they'll definitely. I think they'll definitely at least split the work, and I can see. Demko
I think it'll be fairly even. I think it'll be fairly even regardless.
Because they did pay Holtby. They didn't pay him to just be a backup. There's gonna be a 1-2.
They had to pay Holtby.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think they paid Holtby because they wanted him to probably
Vegas.
Be the starter going.
I think. Sorry, not Vegas. I think that just had to do with Seattle as well. You have to protect the goalie, and you don't want to lose Demko. You don't want to lose DiPietro. You'd rather lose Holtby.
Fair. Yeah. So. No, that's a good point. But yeah, I think Demko, again, I feel like people are sleeping on Vancouver again like they did last year. I don't really see a reason why to sleep on them again this year when they're in a worse division. I could definitely see them being, like I said, those 2nd through 5 spots in Canada are so variable with Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and Montreal. I think any of those teams could finish in any order 2 to 5, and I think Vancouver has as good a chance of any of them to be second.
I think they would have the best chance of taking that top spot over the Leafs, because they have the playoff experience now. They've gone pretty far. They've won 2 rounds, right? No, one round, right? 1 round or 2?
Yeah, 1 round.
1 round. They won a round, or 2 rounds technically. They won the play-in round.
Right. Yeah.
So they have that experience under their belts. They aren't the favorites, even though they should be. They should be the favorites in this division, I would say, because of their playoff success last year. They are the higher ranked team, and they are being underestimated. So I think they got something to prove. They're coming after these other Canadian teams this year.
Yeah, well, I think again that it all comes down to the goalies. If Demko comes out and plays, it becomes the next Binnington, becomes the next Jari. I think they have a great chance of finishing at least second, if not challenging for first. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're a top team in the division, and I think Demko could be the key to their success, and that's why I have them on sleeper goalies. And then one last name, kind of deep sleeper goalie, Cal Peterson, on the backup for the Kings.
Oh yeah.
Kings have nobody else. Quick is getting old. They don't seem to like Quick. Peterson got into a couple games last year. Still really young. Looked okay. Put up decent numbers in the minors. So I think he sees an opportunity there to be the next goalie in LA, and he could seize it and become a great goalie. Like Binnington and Jari going into last year were absolute no names.
No.
So I don't think it's that crazy to pick a guy like Peterson, Kakin, and Husso to be that name, because that's what Binnington and Jari were. No one was talking about those guys going into 2 years ago or the year before. So yeah, I hope one of those four guys that I mentioned will be the next Binnington. I don't think
it's
I'll
a good
draft
bet.
any of them.
No,
The one I would look at drafting Demko for sure.
Yeah.
But the Peterson, Kakin, and Husso, I wouldn't draft.
I would maybe consider Kakinen just because I think he could take Talbot's starting role the quickest. Yeah. That'd be it though.
At the very least, you just put them on your watch list, and if they get hot, just try to scoop them up before anyone else notices, and
Yeah. Exactly.
see what happens.
Yeah, especially like you said, like teams are going to be using more than one goalie this year a lot.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's gonna be
even those
vital.
young goalies will have ample opportunity to play. Husso, there's no one else on St. Louis right now. Husso will get into 10, 15, 20 games unless he really screws up in his first 5 games. He'll be playing a lot of games and has a lot of chance to showcase what he has. So yeah, I think this year is the best year to just take swings on goalies and hope for the best, which is my strategy usually. Like I said, I don't like drafting goalies early, and I think there's a lot of value in late round picks for goalies this year.
All right. So where do we go from here? This is tricky because we are about, I think, an hour and a half into this episode. So I think what I'm going to do, I have a segment here, and it's for my fantasy league. We picked our keepers, and it's going to be called Agree or Disagree. So I'm going to tell you the 5 best players from each of, so I got 4 teams here. I'm not going to do all of them, and I'm not going to say their names as well. I want to keep it private. But I'm going to say the 5 best players from their team last year, and then I'm going to tell you who they kept. And then you're just going to say if you agree or disagree. All right. So the first one, last year they had David Pastrnak, Patrice Bergeron, Jonathan Huberdeau, John Carlson, and Andrei Vasilevsky. And they decided to keep Pastrnak, Carlson, and Vasilevsky. Do you agree or disagree?
The other 2 names?
The other 2 were Bergeron and Jonathan Huberdeau. So
Pastrnak, agree.
They keep the forward, they keep the defenseman, and they keep the goalie.
And that's John Carlson.
John Carlson, yes.
John Carlson, agree. Vasilevsky, agree. I think you have to agree on all of them. I think Pastrnak injury obviously hurts him a bit, but you can't pass up the opportunity to not keep him.
I think the only argument is that maybe you could take Pastrnak in the first round of your draft and keep someone else.
Well, that's a good point. That is a good point because
not the first round, because that wouldn't do anything, I guess, but the second round.
Yeah, no.
Second round you could probably take him.
With his injury, he definitely drops a bit, and like you do say, like everyone says, it's hard to mess up a first round pick. So you drop him, keep a guy. I think Huberdeau would be the guy to pick. Obviously, Bergeron, he's still a good player, but he's got to slow down eventually. And I think it could be any year now, especially starting the year without Marchand, without Pastrnak for a little bit. Well, Marchand for a little bit, Pasternak for longer, I think hurts his value a little bit. Yeah, so you could make the argument to pick Huberdeau over Pasternak, but overall, I think Vasilevsky, Pasternak, Carlson are all solid guys.
All right. Next team, last year, top 5 players, Austin Matthews, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, Victor Hedman, and Alexander Barkov. It's a pretty good
That's
team.
A great top 5. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You can only keep 3, and they decided to keep Austin Matthews, Andrei Svechnikov, and Victor Hedman. So no
dropping Aho.
No Barkov.
I think I agree with Matthews. Obviously, I think he'll have a great year in the Canadian division. Hedman, agree. You got to have a defenseman in there for sure. He's top guy, always a top guy. Svechnikov is the tough one. I think it comes down to Aho or Svechnikov for me. Barkov is still a great player, but I don't think he's elite fantasy level. And out of those 5 guys, he's definitely the 5th. He's great in real life, just fantasy. He's not elite. He could be, but I don't see him there. I think it's such a tough decision because they're such similar players, I think.
Yeah, and they play on the same line.
They play on the same line, same team.
Do you just take the winger? I guess you just take the winger and Svechnikov.
But I think Aho is winger eligibility, doesn't he?
Okay. Probably, yeah.
I think
in this league, it's just forwards. In this league,
okay, so it's a bit different.
Yeah.
God, that's so tough.
Yeah.
I guess Aho is a little bit of a bigger sample size, maybe. But it really comes down to whether you need more goals or more
goals or assists. Exactly.
I think
Matthews will give you the goals, so you might.
You can't really mess up too much between Aho and Svechnikov. So it really comes down to if you think you need goals, which are it's hard to say. I think goals are a little bit harder to find in the draft, so it might be better to pick 2 guys that are going to get you lots of goals. So it's a toss-up for sure. I don't even think I can agree or disagree. It's just so close. It just comes down to if he thinks he needs assists, keep Aho. If he thinks he needs goals, keep Svech.
Yep. That's pretty good. I agree with those keepers as well. All right, next one. Last year's top 5, Nathan McKinnon, Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad,
wow,
Roman Josi,
wow,
and Tuukka Rask.
Okay. Please tell me he didn't keep Tuukka.
He kept Tuukka.
Oh, disagree immediately.
He kept Panarin, and he kept McKinnon.
Okay, McKinnon, obviously, yes.
Yes.
Panarin, I think you have to say yes.
Yeah.
You can't keep 2 centers I guess with forwards it's a bit different, but still you can get centers later in the draft. I think Zib won't be as good as he was last year. He had a really high shooting percentage. I see he'll still be a great player, but I see a little bit of a regression this year.
Probably, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, Rask or Josi, you have to go Josi. I'm sure. Do you remember where Josi went in your draft? I'm sure it was like 4th, 5th round.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So that kind of value, like
he had a great year.
Rask doesn't give you that kind of value. Like Josi is going to be a 2nd round player next year. You're not going to find him in the 4th or 5th round. So I think.
But he could still take him. He could keep in mind this is a keeper. So Josi in our league right now could even go 1st round. He could go 1st round because there's so many guys off the board.
But that's my point is you got so much value keeping him when he's worth a 1st or 2nd round pick this year.
Definitely.
Keeping him when you picked him in the 4th or 5th round is way more valuable over keeping Rask, who's getting up there in age, opted out of the season last year. Boston in such a tough division. I don't like it. I think you have to keep Josi over Rask. But that's just me who doesn't like goalies. So a little bit biased, but I think I'm making the right call. You have to keep Josi over Rask.
Okay. Interesting.
Are you going to tell me which team is yours? Oh, no,
you don't know my team?
I know which team's yours. I know which team's yours. You texted me about it.
I'm not going to say – yeah, exactly. I asked you about it.
Yeah. No, I remember now.
And I also said who I drafted earlier in this podcast. So
I felt like so long ago. We've been talking.
Yeah,
so
I know,
long.
right? Jeez. All right, this one This one is interesting because he finished last place, and his team is pretty garbage. It's pretty bad.
How
All
many
right.
teams are in this league? 8?
There was 8 last year. Now there's 10.
Okay.
So last year, last place team, he had Alex Ovechkin, Patrick Laine.
Mm-hmm.
These are top 5 players, by the way. Braden Shen, Brock Besser, and Eric Carlson. And
Okay, what did he go with?
he kept Ovechkin, Braden Shen, and Eric Carlson.
Ovechkin, again, easy agree. Even though he's getting old, he's still gonna put up goals no matter what. Shen, I mean, you like the eligibility center and wing.
Yeah,
But I
well,
don't.
same. It's just forwards. Just forwards.
Yeah,
Right?
like you said, it's just forwards. Carlson, I think, with those players between Besser and who was the other name?
Patrick Laine.
Besser and Laine, they're kind of the same player, so you're obviously going to choose between one of the two. I think I would probably lean. It's tough because it's tough to judge where Laine is going to play. If he's playing with Scheifele, I think you lean Laine. But he looks like he's probably going to be playing with Stastny on the second line there. Another sleeper, by the way. I think Stastny could have quite a good year playing on the second line. I think if he's playing with Stastny, you got to go Besser. But yeah, I think you take Besser over Shen. I think Besser had a down year last year. I could see him definitely bumping up in value with his. I don't think his injury will linger. He's still very young, so I think he'll have a good bounce back year. I think you pick him over Shen, and I think honestly, I might keep Carlson if I'm in that situation. I think, like I said, Besser and Laine are two of the same players pretty much. They're both goal scoring wingers, so I think we both talked about how Carlson is a pretty good sleeper option. So, but then again, it's so tough to judge. I think you pick him just because Shen isn't very good as a top 5.
He didn't have too many options.
Keeper. And, yeah, exactly. And Laine and Besser are so similar. I think if those two players are anybody else, half decent, you might pick them over Carlson because you can get Carlson late. I'm sure Carlson went probably second or third round last year
for sure
for you. So you can get him probably 8th-ish round, 6th, 8th, 9th round. So if those two other players are anybody different, then you might lean them. But just because of what there is, I think he made the right call going with Carlson.
Okay. I think I'm just going to leave it there.
Please, 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 in your league, I heard this on Fantasy Hockey Podcast again, stealing a lot from them, but they know a lot. Do not be the one to start the stream of goalie picks, and do not be the one to end the stream of goalie picks. Just don't do it.
Interesting.
Obviously, those top, like Vasilevsky, Hellebuck, maybe Leonard is in that conversation, a couple other guys. Those guys, okay, you can pick them second, third round. Anybody else, please, for the sake of everyone in your draft, make it interesting. Pick wingers and D in those early mid rounds. Save goalies for 5th, 6th round. I think this year there's so many options late with there being such a short schedule, condensed schedule, so much more splitting starts. I don't think even Vasilevsky has the least value he's had in years this season.
Yep.
So, and even if you see the goalie pick starting to boom, 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 all the goalies start to go off the boards, don't panic.
Yeah.
Take that opportunity to pick a great winger, a great defenseman, even a great center that people pass up on, and then you might be the one to stop the goalie slide. Maybe it only goes 3 goalies in a row, and then you pick a winger or a defenseman, and then everyone goes, okay, I'm going to
don't just keep drafting goals.
Yeah, honestly, I got sucked into that last year. I picked Gibson in the 4th round, which turned out to be a terrible pick. Thankfully, Markstrom fell to me in the 9th, so I saved some value there, but I just saw the goalies going off and I panicked, and when I need a goalie, okay, Gibson.
Yeah, just remember,
This year,
Capo Kakinen's always there for you.
exactly. Capo Kakinen and Ville Husso are always
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So, yeah, my one piece of advice, don't fall victim to the goalie slide. Don't start it. Don't end it. If you're in the middle of it, capitalize, pick somebody that's being passed up on. Like, I could have gone a goalie in the third. I got Draisaitl in the third round of my draft last year. So I guess I didn't fall victim to it that much, but I could have even let Gibson go and picked another great player in the fourth that could have helped me way more than Gibson did.
Yeah.
So yeah, just if you're in the goalie slide, I know it's going to be tempting. You're going to say, you're going to panic. You're going to go, I need a goalie. I need a goalie. I need a goalie. Just take a deep breath. Take a look at the names that are on the board, and you might find, I mean, I don't think you'll find a Draisaitl like I did last year, which was pretty lucky,
Definitely
but you'll find a top guy. I guarantee you that'll help you a lot more than a shot in the dark on a non-top 5 goalie. Like I said, if you can pick Vasilevsky, if you can pick Hellebuck, if you can pick one of those top 5 guys, okay, maybe do it. But besides that, hold off, wait a little bit, value in the last rounds. Even tandem, look for a tandem. I mentioned Nashville, Islanders, Varlamov and Sorokin, both ranked really low. That system is always going to be good. You can get both of them in the later rounds, and then you're set. You have your starts every week. So just hold off on goalies. Don't panic. Pick a winger or a defenseman.
There you go. Tyler Moore making his case to join the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. What all I'll say is make sure you draft your lineup, make sure you set your lineup every single day. You don't want to have any guys that are playing on your bench. Make sure you get your goalie starts in as well, please, and thank you. And don't complain about not winning your week because of it. You got to get them in. And yeah, that's it. We'll be back very, very soon. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment down below for any future episode suggestions. We're also on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, so make sure you check us out there. And yeah, stay tuned for the Toronto Maple Leafs season hype video coming out this Friday, I believe, unless there's any setback. Should be coming out this Friday. Also, Happy New Year, because this will be the last episode before the new year. So hope you guys have a safe and healthy 2021. Tyler, all the best to you as well in the new year. And can't be any worse than 2020, hopefully. So yeah, all the best. Hoping. All the best in the new year. Go Canada, go in the World Junior Hockey Championships. And yeah, hockey is right around the corner. So make sure you guys do well in your draft. Do your research. And yeah, that's it. We'll see you guys later. Take care. Peace.